Today I will discuss the hardware and different parts of ventilator and circuit. They are same for every ventilator. First I will explain the animated images, then I will show the real images. To get the preset FiO2, first we need a compressor and blender. This is oxygen compressor which contain 100% FiO2. This is air compressor which contain 21% FiO2. They are connected to a blender which is a high pressure chamber. Blender mix the oxygen and air and produce required amount of FiO2. Then oxygen from the blender goes to a low pressure chamber where a FiO2 monitor is present to quantify the oxygen. Then air goes through a flow meter. Air that comes from the flow meter is cold and dry, which can damage the airway. So this cold and dry oxygen should be gone through a humidifier which humidify the oxygen to 100% relative humidity and warm the oxygen to 37 degrees Celsius. Then oxygen goes to inspiratory limb and from the inspiratory limb to the expiratory limb. But intermittently oxygen goes to lung via the endotracheal tube. Between the Y connector and the endotracheal tube there is a flow sensor which sense how much amount of air goes into the lung, that is minute ventilation or tidal volume. Tidal volume is how much amount of air goes into the lung per breath, and minute ventilation is how much amount of air goes into the lung per minute. In the expiratory limb there is a valve. This is called PIP valve. This valve maintain the PIP pressure during inspiration and maintain the PWP pressure during expiration. Compressor and blender. This is oxygen compressor, this is air compressor, this is blender, and this is flow meter. This is the front part of the ventilator. In upper part there is monitor, in the middle part there are different types of knobs, and in the lower part there are different types of ports. In right lower corner there is inspiratory port for attachment of proximal part of the inspiratory limb, and this is expiratory port for attachment of proximal part of the expiratory limb of the ventilator circuit. This is the prox port. This port is for pressure sensor. In prox port, proximal part of the pressure sensor is attached and distal part of the pressure sensor is attached to the expiratory limb. And this is port for the high flow oscillatory ventilator. Now we see the back part of the ventilator. In the back part of the ventilator, left lower corner there is AC power point, left upper corner there is DC power point. In upper part there are three square. First one for the network port, second one for SpO2 sensor, and third one for videographic array sensor. In right upper corner there are three port. First one is for flow sensor, second one is for CO2 sensor, and third one is for ultrasonic nebulizer. In right lower corner there are two port. Upper port is for oxygen tubing which is white colored, and lower port is for air tubing which is black colored. And in proximal part of the air tubing there is a filter with water trap. Now we know the parts of the ventilator circuit. Number one is inspiratory limb. Inspiratory limb has two parts. Part one is connected between the inspiratory port in the ventilator and the humidifier, and part 2 is connected between the humidifier and the Y connector. Expiratory limb, Y piece connector connecting the inspiratory limb and the expiratory limb. Fourth one is flow sensor which present between the Y piece connector and the ET tube. Pressure sensor connecting the prox port of the ventilator and the expiratory limb. Then temperature sensor, proximal and distal temperature sensor which is blue colored. Proximal temperature sensor has two phalanx and it is connected to the proximal part of the inspiratory limb, and distal temperature sensor is connected to the distal part of the inspiratory limb. Temperature port in the humidifier base. Then Heater wire adapter and connector. Heater wire adapter is yellow colored and it is present in the base of the humidifier. There are two heater wire connector. One is connecting to the proximal part of the inspiratory limb, which is butterfly shaped, and other is connected to the proximal part of the expiratory limb. Then humidifier chamber and base. Now we see the real images and try to identify the different parts of the ventilator without any marking. This is the inspiratory limb, this is the inspiratory port, this is the expiratory limb, this is the expiratory port, and this is the prox port for pressure sensor. This yellow colored port is heater wire adapter. Below the yellow colored port there is a blue colored port. This blue colored port is temperature probe. What is this? This is the proximal temperature sensor which has two phalanx. What is this? This is the heater wire connector connecting to the base of the inspiratory limb. This is the inspiratory limb which is blue colored and this is the expiratory limb which is white colored. This is the inspiratory limb. This is the inspiratory limb. This part of the inspiratory limb is attached to the humidifier and this part for connection of the heater wire connector and this part is for connection of the temperature sensor which is biphalanx. What is this? This is the heater wire adapter. What is this? This is the butterfly shaped heater wire connector. What is this? This is also the heater wire connector. This is connected to the expiratory limb. This is connected to the inspiratory limb.